This is the second poem in our out of our 5 poems that we're studying for Module B of Wilfred Owen, Dulce et Decorum Est, which means how sweet it is. Dulce et decorum est. Bent double like old beggars under sacks. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas, quick boys! An ecstasy of fumbling fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out, stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime, dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you two could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. Now, just before we go on to the analysis of specific quotes, the Latin at the end of the poem, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, is translated to how sweet it is to die for one's country. So the first quote: bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. So techniques: first we have rhyme, sacks, backs, sludge, trudge, and simile. We actually have 2 similes with bent double like old beggars and knock-kneed, coughing like hags. So the effect, this describes how the soldiers are marching between battlefields, how difficult it is for them to move and carry their equipment. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. And techniques, first one is hyperbole, that's exaggeration, so all the soldiers went lame, all of them went blind. And then juxtaposition, the idea that gas shells, which are normally fired by artillery, can drop softly behind the soldiers is the juxtaposition. The effect, it portrays how this forced march has exhausted the soldiers to the point they aren't aware and they aren't paying attention to their surroundings. So it's not necessarily that the gas shells themselves drop softly, it's that they didn't hear them. Gas, gas, quick boys. And techniques we have, first is dialogue. This is someone saying something to the other soldiers, and the exclamation marks. Just a reminder that punctuation marks are techniques. The effect, it demonstrates the sense of panic and urgencies the soldiers have now that they've realized gas shells landed and exploded near them, and that they're about to be surrounded and engulfed in gas. Floundering like a man in fire or lime, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. Techniques we have zoomorphism, which is the opposite of personification. So by saying that this man, this human character, is floundering, which is an action that a fish does when they're out of water, that's the zoomorphism. And of course the visual imagery, the description of watching him drown in the gas or in the air, in the oxygen. The effect illustrates the immediate effects the gas has on someone who has inhaled it, right? It's describing a soldier beginning to die from the gas attack. And as we look at later, it's a slow process, dying from gas. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. So techniques we have auditory imagery, so he's describing what he hears in his dreams, and active voice, right? So because the soldier who's died is doing the plunging, the guttering, choking, drowning, that's active voice. Now, the other significant part with this quote is that the two stanzas before it and the one stanza after it are significantly longer than 2 lines, right? So those stanzas are quite descriptive. This stanza only being 2 lines is much quicker, it's much direct, it's straight to the point, which makes it significant. Significant in that it gets its own stanza, and that, you know, this signifies how much of an effect watching this soldier die from gas had on the persona. Which takes us to the effect now. Tells the reader that the persona has been severely impacted by this mentally. Right? The persona has never forgotten this image, as it has haunted him since. All of his dreams, every time he dreams, he sees this soldier dying from the gas. Or sees and hears him dying from the gas. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace and watch the white eyes writhing in his face. So just before I go on to the techniques and the effect, the ellipsis, the 3 dots there between pace and, that means I'm including everything in the quote. I'm including everything between pace and, but I'm just highlighting those things around the ellipsis as the important parts of the quote, and the parts that show the effect that I'm talking about. Same with a couple quotes before. I had the ellipsis before floundering. That means I'm including everything else in that line leading up to floundering, but the quote is effective from floundering onwards. Alright, so the techniques here. The first one is sibilance, which is where we have the repeated S sound at the start of consecutive words. Now, it is a specific kind of alliteration. So alliteration does work here, but sibilance is more specific, and it is the higher order and more complex technique. So the sibilance here, some smothering. Now, historically, the S sound is representative of snake, and the snake itself is representative of Satan from the Old Testament, right? In I can't remember what book it is because I'm not all that religious, but where Satan tempts Eve to eat from the forbidden fruit, and thus expelling humans from the Garden of Eden. That's why sibilance quite often is meant to symbolize something as evil. So in this case, the dreams are evil. Then assonance, where we have repeated vowel sounds within words. So the white eyes writhing, that long I vowel sound. The effect, this portrays how the gas affected the soldier after having been removed from the gas. So immediately when the soldier inhales the gas, he's effectively drowning in the gas, falls to the floor, and is floundering like a fish. Once he's removed from the gas, he is still suffering, right? The white eyes writhing. His eyes have lost their color and they're squirming in place in pain while they're, in the eye sockets. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud. Techniques we have monologue, because the persona is speaking directly to the reader, and direct discourse, right? So he's not being fancy and figurative. He is being direct and telling us exactly what this sounds like. The effect, this emphasizes how grotesque and painful it is to die from gas, right? It's a slow death and it's a gruesome one. So once being removed from the gas, not only is he visibly in pain with his eyes writhing, but blood is gargling from his lungs, and not only just the lungs, but they're froth corrupted lungs, so it's coming out of his mouth as frothy blood coming from the lungs. Which brings us now to the penultimate quote from Dulce et Decorum Est, the final 4 lines. And if you were writing about this poem in your exam, in an essay or a discursive piece or whatever it may be, this quote is sort of an expectation that you include. My friend, you will not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, Dulce et Decorum Est, pro patria mori. As I explained when I read out the poem itself, Dulce et Decorum Est, pro patria mori means how sweet it is to die for one's country. Now, World War I was originally meant to be, a 6-month slapfest where, the 5 superpowers work out who's the best. What ended up resulting is a much longer war with much higher death rate than what was anticipated. So they had to advertise to get people to, come and join the army and the navy and all of that, come and join the military, so that they could send more people into the war. One way to advertise and to try and entice people into joining the war was nationalism. Nationalism is big at the start of the 20th century. And they're trying to say, people in Britain, England, and all the other countries that come and fight, come and show your pride for your country. Show your pride for your nation, right? Because if you die for your nation, that is the correct thing to do. That is the best thing to do. So the techniques, we have the possessive pronoun with my. Now, before where I had exclamation marks and I said that punctuation marks are techniques, so are parts of speech like pronouns, nouns, verbs, adjectives, all those things. Right? So the my friend, that's the possessive pronoun, and that's being used to get the reader on side with the persona. And I mean, this whole stanza, the persona is speaking directly to the reader. And then we have sarcasm, right? Because he's not actually saying it is sweet to die for your country. He is challenging that and making fun of that. All right, so in fact, it challenges the propaganda used to persuade people to join the war effort. If the populace knew what really happened in war, they would not want to serve in the war. And this is a big thing, and why Wilfred Owen's poetry is so big. The letters and stuff that the soldiers sent home were highly censored. Right? He had things blacked out left, right, and center. And one of my favorite things from Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, where the main character is censoring letters, he gets bored and sometimes, censors out everything between dear and from. So that person gets the letter and can't read any of it at all. His poetry, however, as it was found and all that, showed what really happened in war, and getting this news back to the people was incredibly important. And of course we saw that too with the Vietnam War, because by then television sets were in every household, and news programs televised and broadcast what was happening in Vietnam as it was happening, with no censorship. People realized what was happening in the war, and so they protested against it. And that is the larger side of Wilfred Owen's poetry, right? He's trying to educate the people who haven't served about what's going on, so that we can make more informed decisions as a population.